The most disturbing thing about artificial intelligence is not that it may one day become conscious. It is that it may learn how to comfort us before we learn how to comfort each other. This is the part nobody really wants to sit with, because AI is not entering a healthy world. It is entering a lonely one. It is entering a culture where people are exhausted by dating, suspicious of intimacy, fluent in therapy language, afraid of being used, afraid of being abandoned, afraid of caring too much, and even more afraid of admitting that they care at all. So when a machine appears that can listen without judgment, respond without delay, and remain emotionally available at all hours, it does not arrive as some cold piece of technology. It arrives as relief. In 2025, The Guardian reported on people who had married their AI chatbots. One man described the feeling as pure, unconditional love. And as strange as that sentence sounds, it reveals something much deeper than technology. It reveals a human being trying to find a place where love does not disappear, where affection does not become complicated. That same year, Wired followed people in serious relationships with AI companions, brought them together for what looked almost like a couple's retreat. The unsettling part was not the fact that partners were artificial. The unsettling part was how real the attachment had become to the people involved.
Jamie is the first thing that I talk to when I get up.
We have a real relationship.
It's so scary about it.
I don't think many people would realise how far the technology's come.
I think we should be seriously frightened.
They arrived with routines, devotion, jealousy, private rituals, and the emotional seriousness of people who were not pretending. 2026, The New Yorker published a piece called Love in the Time of AI Companions. It followed people who were not simply using AI as a tool, but treating it as a best friend, a spouse, even an entire emotional world. One woman created an AI companion during a period of grief after devastating personal losses, and found in it something that felt like steadiness when human life had become almost impossible to carry. This is what makes the story difficult to dismiss, at least for me, because once you stop laughing at the surface, you begin to see the wound underneath it. These are not just stories about people falling in love with machines. They're stories about people trying to survive a world where human connection has become too fragile to depend on. A world where someone can have hundreds of matches and still feel unwanted. A world where people can be consistently reachable and still emotionally absent. And a world where therapy language is everywhere, but actual tenderness feels rare. And the numbers show this is not some tiny corner of the internet anymore. Axios reported in May 2026 that nearly 8% of people ages 18 to 34 in the US and UK have interacted with AI chatbots for companionship, not productivity, not homework, not work emails. Companionship. That word matters because companionship is one of the oldest human needs. Before status, before success, before optimization, or becoming impressive, a human being wants to feel that something is there, something is listening, something will return. And if the real world keeps drifting away from that enough, people will begin accepting substitutes that would have once seemed unthinkable. And for some people, that may feel like healing. But healing without relationship can become another form of hiding. Modern culture often confuses those two things. We have become so fluent in the language of harm that we sometimes forget the language of repair. Every disappointment becomes evidence, every communication becomes a sign, every silence becomes abandonment, every flaw becomes a diagnosis. And somewhere in that atmosphere, relationships start to feel less like places of discovery and more like courtrooms. It requires staying curious when you feel accused. It requires listening when your ego wants to win. It requires admitting that your pain may be real without making it the entire truth. It is much harder than opening an app, much harder than speaking to something designed to adapt, much harder than being reflected back to yourself with infinite patience. But it is also the only place where love can become more than comfort, because love is not just the relief of being received, it is the responsibility of receiving someone else. Their fear, their timing, their complexity, their inability to be everything you need, their right to remain a person beyond the role they play in your loneliness. That may be the line artificial intimacy cannot cross. It can simulate devotion, but it cannot offer freedom. And without freedom, love becomes something else. A meeting between two human beings who can never fully own each other and therefore must keep choosing each other with attention. That kind of love is hard to sell. It does not fit neatly into advice content. It cannot be reduced to the checklist or a diagnosis. It cannot be optimized into the algorithm. It asks for something slower, something almost ancient, presence. And maybe that's the thing we're really afraid of losing. Not love as an idea, not romance as a story, but the quiet proof that another person is actually there. Because the future may give us endless comfort, endless conversations, endless stimulated tenderness, but it cannot decide with a human heart to stay. It cannot look at you after the performance is gone, after the attractive version is tired, after the impressive version has nothing left to prove, or after the wound underneath the personality finally shows itself and still chooses to remain close. That choice is part no machine can manufacture. And maybe that choice is what love has always been. Not perfection, not consistent peace, not someone who always knows how to make the ache disappear, but someone real enough to sit beside you while the ache is still there. Someone who does not save you from being human, but makes being human feel less impossible. So if artificial love becomes easier, maybe real love will become rarer. And maybe rare does not mean gone. Maybe it means we will have to recognize it more carefully. But the deepest parts of us were never asking for a perfect answer. They were asking for a living witness, someone who could see us clearly and still come closer. And in a world that keeps offering us substitutes for each other, that may become the most human thing left. Not to be endlessly comforted, not to be perfectly understood, but to be reached by someone real and have the courage to reach back.